Are you a guy who goes to the gym and you want to get into running, but you're worried about losing your gains? Or maybe you're a runner that wants to start going to the gym, but you don't want it to impact your running performance. Today, we're going to be discussing how we can integrate strength training so you can still improve your running performance, prevent injuries, and have a half decent physique at the same time. Now, by all means, I'm not the biggest guy out there, but I'm definitely not the skinniest guy out there hitting the pavement as well. One key fact that I want to bring up before we get into the nuts and bolts of this is the fact that I had a history of strength training before I got into running. And because of this, I've been able to build up a half decent base of muscle before I actually started to take my running more seriously. So when you see certain figures out there on YouTube and Instagram who have these crazy physiques, a lot of muscle, just stop and ask, were they actually doing a fair bit of lifting before they got into running? To be realistic, if you are a guy who has built up a good foundation of muscle mass and strength and you're introducing running, you're probably going to wind up having a better physique than the guy who's typically a skinny runner and is going to try and put on muscle. However, it doesn't mean that you can't tick both goals. Those goals being improving your running and getting kind of jacked. So the first question that we want to ask is, how do the principles for increasing muscle and strength change when running comes into the picture? Realistically, they don't change that much at all. We still need to make sure that we're getting adequate training stimulus through the volume and intensity and types of exercise we're doing to stimulate muscle and strength gain. We still need to make sure that we're consuming enough energy through our diet, enough protein to actually repair and build muscle. And we still need to make sure that we get enough recovery and enough sleep to allow our body to adapt. In the grand scheme of things, what we actually have to think about here is, how do we balance our strength training with our running? And also, how can we compensate for that extra expenditure of energy, make it up through our diet so we can either maintain muscle mass or look at building it in future. So to kick this off, let's start with our training stimulus. What do we need to be doing to actually stimulate muscle growth, or at least maintain the muscle mass that we have built whilst we're adding running into our training routine? To do this, we need to make sure that we're picking the right exercises that challenge the muscles that we're trying to build or maintain muscle mass in. We need to make sure that we're hitting them with the optimal rep range. So let's say if we're talking about hypertrophy, this is anywhere between 5 to 30 and even more reps. We need to be hitting these exercises with the right intensity. So how exactly do we hit it with the right intensity, you ask? What I personally use and what I use with my clients is RIR, reps in reserve. Now, for example, if you want to know if you're working out hard enough, if you're hitting the weights hard enough, ask yourself this at the end of each set. How many reps did I have left in the tank? If the majority of the time you feel like you've got more than 4 reps left in the tank, there's a high chance that you are not training hard enough. My only exception here is that when you're actually focusing on skill acquisition, you're trying to perfect your squat, your bench press, your deadlift, whatever the movement may be, this is where you hit it at a lower intensity with a lower weight. You're not going as close to failure because you're focused on that skill component. Are there exercises that we can take closer to failure? Yes, there are. This is where we look at our movements like doing a bicep curl, tricep extensions, lateral raises, machine-based movements where we're in a safer setting to take our muscles closer to failure without risking injury. As a rule of thumb, we could look at working anywhere between 0 to 2 reps in reserve here. And this can actually depend on the point of your program that you're in as well. Now, maybe we start to look at movements with a little bit less stability. Maybe we're using a barbell, maybe we're using a dumbbell, and there's some compound movements in there like a dumbbell bench press, a dumbbell row. If we're using a barbell, this could be a barbell bench press, some overhead press. This is where you might want to leave a little more in the tank more often than not. Somewhere between 1 to 3 reps left in the tank. Now, when it comes to the big dogs, the big boys, if we've got our squat, we've got our deadlifts, and maybe some of their variation using barbells, these are highly taxing movements, and you obviously want to make sure that you're doing these well before you take them this close to failure. But generally at the start of a program, anywhere between 2 to 4 reps left in the tank at the end of each set is what I would use for myself or some of my clients. The only thing that we need to consider when we look at these training intensities using reps in reserve is that this is going to be based off your perception of what that effort is. I've had clients who've said they've only got 2 reps left in the tank when I could clearly see that was 5 or 6 more. So this is a skill in itself to learn to accurately gauge how much effort or how far away from failure you are on whatever given exercise that you're doing. All right, so let's discuss sets and reps. When it comes to reps, I prescribe myself and my clients no more than 3 to 4 sets. I have some priorities with my training of movements that I want to maintain a certain level of strength in, or maybe even progress in as well. So usually when I look at things like my squat or deadlift and some of their variations, I like to get 1 to 2 more sets in, whether I'm doing 3 or 4, because I'm focused on that skill acquisition component as well. Strength is the byproduct of skill. If your brain understands how to coordinate yourself in a certain fashion, you're going to be able to produce more force. Often what will correlate with you doing higher sets, if you're doing 3, 4, for some people, maybe even 5 sets of a certain exercise, you definitely need to be looking at lowering the intensity that you're hitting these with. Obviously, if you start to increase intensity and volume, you're going to induce more fatigue, which is going to require more recovery. So on the other side of this, when we look at movements that we're taking closer to failure, maybe 0 to 2 reps left in the tank, I've only recently just started to use 2 sets, and I'm noticing some decent results with this, but I'm also noticing that I feel a lot better when it comes into my other training sessions because I'm not plummeting myself into the ground with these high intensity sets that I'm building up too much volume on. So again, think of your machine work, some of your arms and shoulder exercises. These are ones that you might only do 2 sets of, but you're taking them a little bit closer to failure. Reverting back to rep ranges, let's talk about what's going to be optimal for muscle growth. So when we look at hypertrophy, we know now that about 5 to 30 or more reps is going to induce some sort of muscle growth adaptation. So what we want to consider here is how much, again, fatigue that these movements will induce. If we're doing a set of 30 reps with a fucking barbell on some squats, that is going to be a highly fatiguing movement. And chances are it's probably not going to be your quads that go to failure first. It could be some of your stabilizing muscles or even your ticker. So as a rule of thumb, let's keep squats, deadlifts, possibly even bench press and overhead press, those heavier barbell movements, below 10 reps. If you're focused on building maximal strength, we want to keep it below 5 reps. As we start to get into the dumbbells and machines more, this is where we can start to increase those reps. You might want to do between 6 to 12 reps for some of these heavier movements. And then when it gets to those isolation movements like your curls, your lateral raises, your tricep extensions, 12 to 15 to 20. I'm not going to put too much emphasis on rest because I just feel like as long as you're getting enough recovery in to hit that set well with good technique, full range of motion, working within that intensity range, good job. The same goes for tempo. Just make sure you're controlling the movement. Usually I like to slow down the eccentric a little bit more through 2 to 3 seconds. Sometimes I'll pause a little bit while keeping tension on a movement like the barbell bench press, and then I'm more explosive on the concentric phase. Same goes for a squat. Slow on the way down, maybe I pause a little bit at the bottom, not a lot of the time, but then I'm exploding back up, focusing on more power. So we've talked about the volume and intensity a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more globally though. How does our training look across the week? Well, if you're a runner just getting into strength training, you might want to just introduce 2 full body strength sessions at this point, and then maybe build up a little bit more over time. Now, for the person that is in the gym, but you're looking at doing some running, definitely start to consider maybe consolidating your training a bit more. If you're doing some sort of 6-day split, maybe look at doing 2 upper and 2 lower body days. Or given the fact that your legs are probably going to be cooked after those lower body days, maybe consider some full body training. Anything more than 4 strength training sessions, whilst looking at increasing your running volume or keeping the current running that you're actually doing, is going to be a hard task. So you just want to consider your recoverability, your actual abilities, your fitness capacity, and where that kind of lands with how many sessions you'll be doing. This could be anywhere between 2 to 4 strength sessions in combination with your running routine. All right, let's jump into the nutrition side of things. All we're looking at doing is just making sure we're giving your body enough energy. If you're trying to put on muscle, you need to be in a calorie surplus. You also need to be making sure that you're getting enough protein. Rule of thumb, I've talked about it before, 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So if I'm 80 kilos, 160 grams of protein per day. However I want to spread that throughout the day. This could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meals, whatever. To actually know how much you need to be eating from an energy perspective, you're going to have to estimate this with an online calculator or something like MyFitnessPal, where you can work out your maintenance calories if you're just trying to maintain where you're at, or if you're trying to build a bit more muscle, then enter a slight surplus. If you're someone that's trying to lose fat, obviously enter a calorie deficit. One big thing that I will say, if you are not doing it already, is really focus on getting enough carbohydrates in. I always emphasize with myself and my clients that we prioritize our protein intake, high carbohydrate intake, and then minimizing fats where we can when it comes to optimizing performance and body composition. Now, if we start to look at supplements when it comes to building or retaining muscle mass, take protein if you need it. Definitely look at taking creatine monohydrate, 3 to 5 grams per day. That is one of the most evidence-backed supplements that you can get out there that is going to help you to build muscle, build strength, and also has some neuroprotective effects as well. You could potentially look at using something like beta-alanine when you're doing your interval sessions and maybe some of your hardcore training in the gym, but I probably wouldn't recommend anything else other than protein, creatine, And of course, what you're probably already having each morning, caffeine. Now moving on to the next point, recovery. You're doing more training, you're going to need to recover more. One of the biggest factors here that you don't want to miss out on is getting enough sleep. So if you're looking in around that 8 hours of sleep mark, don't be the guy that listens to some life coach or motivational video on YouTube talking about getting 5-6 hours sleep and performing optimally. You could probably do it, but you're probably gonna feel like shit over time. Your testosterone is gonna take a kick. Your performance will eventually plateau. And it's just not the most optimal thing for you to be doing if you're someone who wants to put on muscle or retain muscle whilst you're doing strength training and running. Other considerations you might wanna make outside of nutrition and just getting enough sleep is doing something that helps you to regulate your nervous system. This is where something like breath work or some yoga or just having some downtime for yourself, reading a book, doing something relaxing, whatever stimulates that parasympathetic rest and digest state. Anything that is going to help you to down-regulate is going to help you to respond better to your training. Now, one final thought that I have towards this subject is patience. If you're a guy like me who can tend to run out of patience at times, you're going to have a very hard time building muscle. It is a very slow process. In fact, it's probably going to be easier for you to lose fat than it's going to be to build muscle. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't build a lot of muscle. It just means that you need to be doing the things, consistently eating in that calorie surplus, getting your nutrition right, getting your recovery right, focusing on getting that strength training, hitting it with the right intensity, hitting the right rep schemes, and organizing your training week so you can recover and hit the next session well. You need to be doing that to get the best out of this hybrid training approach. On a side note for you runners out there who are just looking at getting into strength training, good news is that you're going to be very sensitive to this type of training. This is a stimulus that your body hasn't received before, so it should be quite responsive, provided that you follow these measures and organize your training, nutrition, and recovery well. You should be able to put on a lot of muscle and strength in your first few months and even years of training. Now, before I leave you guys today, one final thought that I want to leave you with is how strength training and running are going to affect each other. If you are picking up strength training or you are picking up running and you do all these things that we've talked about, you should have a pretty good projection moving forward. However, don't be surprised if you start doing strength training and you're a little bit sore on your runs. Or don't be surprised if your numbers go down a little bit in the gym if you suddenly pick up all your running training. This is a balancing act, so you may have to tinker with it a little bit, get a few things wrong before you get it right. So my big tip here is don't go in balls to the wall. Make little changes over time, gradually progress, and that's gonna set you up for better responses to whatever training that you're picking up, but also minimize the likelihood of injuries. If none of this helped you in this video today, or you wanna go more into depth, or you've got more questions and you wanna chat with me personally, head over to @CoachMichaelStone on Instagram and send me a DM. If you're interested in the Forge program that has been designed to cater for all of this, your strength training, your running, your nutrition, your breath work, as well as giving you direct access to a coach who's going to provide you with the knowledge, structure, and accountability to achieve your hybrid training goals, your body composition goals, but more importantly, helping you to become the man that you aspire to be, DM me Forge on Instagram, or you can also apply through the link below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video today. Please drop some comments below if you got a little bit of value out of this video or if you've got any contesting thoughts, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you in the comment section. On that note, you guys probably don't understand how much I appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, and commenting on this channel. I'm relatively new to the YouTube world, and to have complete strangers out there giving me positive feedback or even just having a conversation between each other really fills my cup. Until next time, guys, see ya.